And good afternoon, and welcome back to another episode of Luminary Leaders Live. I'm your host. My name is Shelley Harrison, and I love coming on live to introduce amazing people to our audience. And today is no different. I have Wayne Slavitt, who you'll meet in just a moment here. And Wayne is actually a certified exit planning advisor and a business value maximizer. In addition, he just wrote his new book, which I can't wait to show you the cover and talk with Wayne a little bit about that. But without further ado, I would love to welcome Wayne Slavitt.
Hi, Shelley. How are you? Very good to be here today.
Yeah, doing great, Wayne. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And I know that we're going to cover a lot of information about your background, your company, the fact that you're a keynote speaker. I can't wait to talk about that because that's one of my favorite subjects, and the fact that you're a new author. How exciting is that? And I know you've did your reveal a couple of weeks ago on live.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
exciting. Watching that big truck pull up with a pallet full of books is really, really exciting. And I've already sent out quite a few books, and I'm getting a really nice response. So it's exciting. I'm really excited about the future.
Yeah, and I'm excited for you. And I know, in fact, we can even start with the book. Here is my book. I received mine in the mail, and it's Run It Like You'll Sell It and Adopting the Seller's Mindset to Maximize the Value of Your Business. And we'll give you in the show notes, we'll give our audience the opportunity to go purchase the book. And that way, you'll be sending out more books once we get done here, hopefully, right?
Right. You bet.
Yeah. Well, I would love for you, Wayne, to kind of share with our audience, why did you write the book? What prompted you to write it?
A pure ego play, Shelley. No, that's not true. I will tell
Yeah,
you
I
that
didn't think so.
my encounter with potential clients and current clients is that they have one thing in common for the most part, and that is
Mhm.
they've not taken the necessary steps to plan for the most important day in their lives, except for perhaps their marriage or birth of their children.
Yeah.
Selling the business for a business owner is their largest liquidation event, a chance to monetize the many, many years of effort they put into it. And I decided to write a book to help a business owner do the preparation, understanding that every day they need to be ready to sell their business because it's going to happen either voluntarily or involuntarily. A business owner is going to find the day when they're going to wake up and they no longer are going to be able to own their companies. And this happens with every
Yeah.
company. We say in the exit planning business, Shelley, we say that you're either going to exit the business vertically or horizontally. But one day,
Mm.
without any doubt, you are no longer going to own your company. So why not plan for it? So I wrote the book to be a
Yeah.
guide that business owners can refer to. The book is not a big book; it's about 140 pages.
It's a very easy read.
Very
Yeah.
easy
Look at
read.
this.
It's not. I think yeah,
Yeah.
very. It's very easy to read. The back of the book has several pages for you to take notes. It's
Hmm.
really well organized. It talks about the various aspects that are going to impact the value of an owner's company. And just for a moment, if you don't mind, let me talk about business value because that at the end of the day is the main determining factor for how much money a business owner is going to get when he or she decides to sell. So
Yes.
I define
Mhm.
business value very simply. I don't make it complicated. If any of you out there have gone through a valuation or formal business valuation, you may have seen terms like discounted cash flow or weighted average cost of capital or terminal value. And I don't
Big
get involved
terms.
in the complex. Yeah, but to me, there's no
Yeah.
need for that at all. And quite frankly, most business owners glaze over when they start hearing complicated facts. So
Hmm.
I break it down into two variables. Business value is equal to the cash flow or the profit that a company generates offset by the business risk. So I get my clients to focus on those two things and those two things only. What can we do while working together to grow the revenues, to reduce expenses, or at least control them so that we're going
Hmm.
to grow earnings? And then what are we going to do to be able to manage business risk and hopefully eliminate or lower some of the business risk factors that a buyer does not want to take over? So I work with my clients. I've developed my own proprietary business risk assessment scorecard that enables me in about 2 hours to identify all of the major areas of risk that a potential buyer is going to have problems with. And Shelley, the
Hmm.
problem is when a business when a business buyer has problems with risk, they tend to lower the price because they have to hedge their bet. They don't know what
Yeah.
the future might hold, so they have to hedge their bet. So if we know that, let's try to
Mhm.
identify those risk areas now before we get into a transaction with a buyer. And that way we're going to ensure we can grow the value by lowering risk. So it's all in the book.
Yeah.
It's all laid out very easily. There are no big words, maybe a couple of SAT words, but not too many.
Yeah, and you know what I've learned working with you, and we've had the pleasure of representing you with our company, is, you know, it's not something that is done within a few weeks. This is something that it starts 3 to 5 years before a CEO of a company even thinks about selling their business. Can you
Right.
talk a little bit about that? Because I think, you know, when we look at selling a home, I know you have an analogy with a home, with a airplane on the, you know, on the ready to take off tarp, and maybe you can share a little bit about that and how it
Sure.
relates to selling a business.
Absolutely. And the house to me is an example that I've decided to use because everyone can relate to this.
Mhm.
Um, and so I asked the question, if you wake up in the morning and you decide that you want to sell your house and move somewhere else, are you going to simply put a for sale sign in your front yard and see what happens? I mean, people do that, but that really isn't going to give you the
Mm.
highest and best value. Instead, what you would do is you would call in a professional, in this case, a realtor. You would invite the realtor over. The realtor is going to walk the property with you. They're going to take notes and make suggestions. Going to go inside the house, going to walk around. Maybe the realtor is going to say, you know, there's a chip on the sink we probably want to replace, and there's a hole in the carpeting, and maybe the paint's peeling a little bit in the spare bedroom. And you're going to make a whole list of things that you need to do before you decide to put the open house sign on, and even the for sale sign,
Yeah.
especially in this
Yeah.
market, right? So it's so easy to sell a house that you don't want to go on the market too soon, because what will
Mhm.
happen is if you go to market too soon, you're most likely going to have a buyer that's going to say, yeah, but I've got to spend this on a new roof. I've got to spend this on new paint. And they're going to deduct that from the price. So
That's
if
right.
you would do that,
Yeah.
if you go through that process, Shelley, to sell a house, why wouldn't you do at least those kinds of things to prepare for the sale of your most valuable asset? So that's why I use the
Exactly.
analogy. But you know, you mentioned the airplane and the runway, and I want to spend a few minutes
Mhm.
talking about that. And when I ask people if we have a runway that's kind of a small runway, what are we limited by? We're limited by the size of the airplane that we can land on that runway. So if we
Mhm.
think of the runway as time now, if I have more time or a longer runway, I can land and take off larger airplanes. So
Mhm.
think of that runway as time. Think of the airplane as the value of the business. The longer my runway, in other words, the more time you can give me as a business owner to help reduce risk and grow profits, the greater the value can be. Now,
Mhm.
you're exactly right. I want 3 to 5 years if I can. I've sold two companies with 8 years of runway. That's the longest.
Gosh.
I've sold some companies with no preparation. They had an offer on the table. They hired me to help close the deal. And the one thing I tell every client like that, and I don't have too many, but I have some, is
Mhm.
we are not going to be able to accomplish the same benefit to value as we would have been able to had we had more time. So
Mhm.
I have a new client that I signed up a couple of weeks ago, and it's someone I've been talking to off and on for the past 5 or 6 years. And
Oh.
she has a very successful company. It's a large company. Um, she knows me from the community, and she said to me, "I'm done." She said, "I just can't do
She's
this
done.
anymore.
Oh
I
my
just can't do
goodness.
this anymore."
Yeah.
I said to her, "You can't be done yet unless you're going to leave large bags of money on the table, which we don't want to do." So
Mhm.
we bartered, we negotiated, and we came to an agreement that we will put the company for sale in the summer of 2023. In other words, I have about a year and a half. And I said to her, we can do some things in a year and a half, but I want to tell you right up front, there are going to be some things we will not be able to accomplish in a year and a half.
In that
Those are
time
going to
frame.
continue to be on the
Yeah.
table, and the buyer is going to have a reaction to it, and it's likely not going to be a positive reaction. So as long as I'm up
Mm.
front, I will work on projects that are of shorter time frame, but with it comes the consequence of not necessarily the same kind of value gain that we would get if we had a couple of more years.
Yeah, and and it's fascinating because there are businesses out there that need to have an exit plan. They need to make sure that they've geared up, that they have all of their ducks in a row, if you will, when it comes to selling their business. And for them to have someone like you at their fingertips to be able to help them with, I mean, that would be ideal for any, business owner that I think that, is going to go through that process of selling. But what I'm curious, when, right now I know that you work with businesses that are 5 to 10 million in revenue.
Five to
What would
100
you,
million. Five to
or 5
100
to 100, I am so sorry, 5 to 100 million. That's right. Exactly. So in that, taking that scenario, what would you recommend for a company from 5 to 100 million if they're right now today thinking, oh my goodness, and what is that one thing that you would recommend to them to get started with to just get that process going if they want to sell their business?
It's an easy question and an easy answer. Read the book.
Ah, your book.
Read the book. That's the
And then
first
call you, right?
That's the first thing. And then I do have something that I call the first 5 steps. And
Hmm.
these are 5 things that we're going to do initially. It's going to take about 30 days. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a rather detailed analysis of the company's financial performance. We're going to look at the last 3 years. We're going to look at the year-to-date numbers. And then we're
Hmm.
going to go one step further and we're going to say, how does this company perform relative to similar companies in their industry? So we're going to do a comparison and we're going to provide that feedback to the owners to say, your revenue growth has been a little above market, but your margins are lower. And we're going to talk about expenses. We're going to talk about the balance sheet. We're going to look at all those various things. The next thing we're going to do, the second of the 5 things we're going to do, is what we call the recast analysis. And
Hmm.
I always tell business owners, I'm sure this does not apply to you or anyone else in the room, that you've run personal expenses through your business. I'm sure it never happens. I heard
Never.
I heard a, I heard a rumor that some people might do it, but and I will tell you the most I don't want to say egregious, but the most serious recast adjustment that I've ever made was a client who had an 85-foot yacht that he ran the cost through the company, and the 5 people that worked full time on that yacht were employees of his company. And so
Mm.
what we want to do is we want to capture all those costs that are not going to recur going going forward with the buyer. So there's basically 3 categories. There's your non-recurring items, the ones that were maybe a one-time charge. Perhaps you had a
Hmm.
lawsuit a couple of years ago, or
Yeah.
perhaps you had to make a one-time investment in something. The second one would be the example I gave with the boat. We call owners discretionary expenses. We don't call them personal expenses; they're discretionary. But
Discretionary.
a new buyer is not going to keep up with those. And then the other final category of the 3 would be those charges that are going to be adjusted because you're selling the company. So, for example, if you own the building in a separate company and you're leasing it to your company at below market, we want to
Mm.
make an adjustment for that as a recast adjustment. You may be overcharging, in which case we can make a downward adjustment. We want to be able to look at what the true earnings capacity. The next thing we
Yeah.
want to do is do the risk assessment I talked about earlier. It's our proprietary risk assessment scorecard, and it's
Hmm.
going to give us an overall idea. Once that's done, we produce a report and we sit down with the owner and say, now let's talk about the areas that we found and let's pull out the top 5 or 10 biggest ones, the ones that are really going to make an impact on value. And let's put
Yeah.
forth a program, a prioritized action plan to deal with those in 90-day sprints. Because I'm very conscious. I used to own companies. I know what it's like to have to run a business. I know my clients are busy and I can't overload them with a bunch of work while we're doing this. We make it very
Yeah.
digestible. And the final thing that we do is we do evaluation. We're going to do a top side valuation, not a complicated 100-page report, but it's going to be a valuation that's based on market transactions. Other privately held companies in your industry that have sold over the last couple of years, we have a database that has that information, and we're going to give you a
Hmm.
rough idea because I want to benchmark the value, Shelley. I want to say, what's your company worth today when we start, and let's do it again a year from now and see what the growth has been. And that those are
Yes.
the, those are the first 5 steps. It's a process that I find to be very informative
Mhm.
because
And
it provides an
comprehensive.
assessment, it's
Yeah.
numerical, and then it lets the owner know that now we have a plan. Now we have a
Mhm.
plan in place, and we're going to then work the plan going forward every 90 days. And I'll meet with the owner and their senior staff as often as we need to. A lot of it these days, of course, we do via Zoom or via email, but whatever it
Mm.
takes to keep moving forward so that one day when the owner's ready to sell, we're in the right position to do that.
Yes. And when you look at kind of the ideal business, there are so many companies out there that have, the 5 million to 100 million in between there.
Mhm.
Who is your ideal client to be working with, or in this case, completely work with them from point A to point
Sure.
Z in selling that business?
It's a great question. And I will tell you, there's a number of factors, but the number one thing, they have to be a nice person. I only work with nice people.
Nice people,
Um, I've,
heart-centered.
I've, I've had,
Mm,
dealings. I've worked for people who have not been the nicest people in the past. And so
mm,
everyone that I work with now, they're nice people. They're people I enjoy
mm.
talking to.
Good
I
people.
enjoy helping. But I also
Mhm.
want clients, Shelley, that are people that really want to go through this process, and that this process is not going to be the easiest process in the world. It's going to take some work, it's going to take some thinking. I will make it enjoyable, I will make it fun, but it's going to be
Yeah,
some work. So an owner to go through this process, if they truly want to get a better price for their company than they otherwise would have, at much better terms than they otherwise, they're going to have to invest the time and the money to move forward with us. And that's
yeah.
why we don't take on every client. We
Mhm.
want to make sure we understand what they're looking for. We want to make sure that their goals are goals that we can help achieve with them,
Right.
and that they're going to enjoy the process like we want to enjoy the process.
Yes, and thank you for pointing that out, because I think the other thing that it could do is it's gonna give that business owner who's looking at that, 3 to 5 year, eventual sale, where it's gonna give them peace of mind during that entire process with you, where they're gonna see things that maybe they couldn't see before, but you're gonna be able to really kinda open up with a microscope and really look at, some of those things that maybe they haven't paid attention to, or maybe they've lost sight of. I mean, do you see that, when you start to work with these companies where, I mean, you're probably giving them aha moments because they didn't think of it or they overlooked it. What are your thoughts on that?
Shelley, you're so right, and especially companies that are at the lower end where they might not have a very deep bench in their company. So you've got an owner who doesn't really have anyone in the company that he or she can talk to.
Yeah.
And then I come online and I become that confidant. I become that person that they can talk about things to. And I ask what if questions. And I will tell you, one of the most common things clients say about working with me is, wow, I never thought of that before. Or
Mhm.
wow, that's amazing how you have come up with that kind of suggestion because I didn't see it. And as you know, you
Yeah.
can get buried when you're working on something by yourself. You can get buried and lose that perspective. So I really enjoy the ability to reach beyond where the thought process has gone in the past, and let's figure out a way to get there in the future, because this process is not easy. We didn't talk about
Yeah.
this, but only 1 in 5 companies that go to market every year are successfully sold.
Mm.
And so the odds are against you. So if you're going to do this, you want to make sure you have the right resources on your side to
That's
make
right.
sure that you are successful. And so I want to be able to work with companies that, of course, want to go through the process, but companies that we can be successful with that are going to be able to get a much better outcome than otherwise would have happened.
Yes, yeah. No, and that's such a great point, because I think, there are a lot of business owners, like you give that, that number, 1 in 4. I mean, that's
One in
that's
five.
3, or 1 in 5, excuse me, 1 in 5, and that's 4 businesses that could have really benefited by working with you,
I say
when you
that
really
if
think
you
about
were on if you were playing baseball with that kind of average, you probably wouldn't even be taken off the bench in the minor leagues. So
Yeah.
let's improve your odds. Let's figure out how we're going to get to a successful outcome, because the process of selling a business, once we even find a buyer, just starting from that point to completion is not a
Yeah.
slam dunk, not a guarantee. So you need to
Mm.
make sure you have the right advisors. I will help a business owner make sure we have the right accounting firm, make sure we have the right legal resources, make sure we have the right
Yeah.
insurance broker to be able to evaluate and add their value to the process to make sure we have the right input. It's very,
Mm.
very important. It's putting a team together, and I play the role of the quarterback to make sure that all the various people are doing what they need to do to make sure we have the right outcome.
Yeah. And I think it's something where the businesses can absolutely benefit, because what you're doing is you're bringing in all those key players and you're doing a full comprehensive evaluation, when it comes
Absolutely.
to really valuing and maximizing, how much that company can be sold for.
And the one final
Yeah.
thing I want to mention, because I know we're running tight on time, but I want to, the
Yeah.
subtitle of the book is Adopting the Seller's Mindset to Maximize the Value of Your Business. So I want to be able to have my clients in a constant state of readiness to sell their company. You deal
Mhm.
a lot with the military, and I salute you for
Yeah.
how loyal you are to the military. As you know, my dad
Thank
was
you.
was a decorated soldier in World
I
War II,
know. I
and
know.
and
Yeah.
and people that are in the military will understand the concept of having their go bag at the front door. They're ready when someone makes that phone call and says, "We need you to leave right now." They're ready. Business owners need to be in that same state of readiness, so
Mhm.
when they do get that email, that unsolicited email, or they do meet a competitor at a trade show who says, "Hey, thinking about doing some acquisitions. Are you interested?" That they're
Yeah.
ready. And that's why we
Mhm.
can't wait to start the process. When that happens, we have to back up and start the process now, because I'm pretty good at predicting things, Shelly, but I
Mhm.
can't predict when they're going to get that phone call. I can't predict when they're going to get
That's
that
true.
inquiry. But if they're a
Yeah.
good company, they're going to be contacted. So let's make sure that we're ready, and we're making decisions that are taking into account how the buyer is going to think about the decision.
Yeah, such great information too, Wayne. And what I also want to point out is that you are a keynote speaker. And I know we're running out of time, but I really want to cover this because I think it's important, where you as what you do, your background and your capabilities in helping businesses during this process. When you speak in front of groups, who's your ideal audience in terms of being able to get up and speak in front of a group?
Sure, a great question. There's two major groups, two main groups that I like to speak to. One, business owners, decision makers, business owners with revenues between 10 million a year and 100 million a year. That's my target in terms of decision makers. But I
Mhm.
also like talking in front of professionals who have clients that meet that same requirement. So that would
Yeah.
be CPAs, attorneys, estate planning advisors, wealth
Mhm.
advisors, insurance brokers, commercial bankers, anyone that has clients that fit into that category are the kinds of people that I want to get a hold of. And that's why I wrote the book. And that's why if you'll see on the screen, you'll see my email address. If you are a business owner that has a business with revenues between 10 million and 100 million, or if you're a professional with clients in that area, shoot me an email, give me your address, and I'll put a free copy of the book in the mail to you. Very soon, the book's going to be available on Amazon for those of you who want to buy it, and it'll also be available as an book very shortly.
Oh, that's awesome. And when you think of being in front of an audience, what are you most excited about when you get in front of that audience, Wayne?
I,
Share with
I'm I'm
us.
I'm most excited about connecting with them. So when I see business owners who shake their head yes, and
Mhm.
they know that this now is a primary task that they've got to start, and they now know that they have someone they can talk to, they can read the book, they can go to my website. I'm available to meet with them. I'm available to talk with them. And so having that moment where they say, "Oh, I've been putting this off, but I can no longer afford to. The risks are too great. I'm going to
Yeah.
lose money if I don't start now." When I can connect, or for a professional to say, "I'm a CPA and I have 5 clients I know who want to sell their companies in the next couple of years. Wow, I now have someone who's an expert who knows how to do this. I'm going to get a hold of them." That having that
Yeah.
connection is what excites me most. And as you know, I'm very bashful and shy in front of people, so that offsets it a little bit.
Oh, not at all. Well, I just want to thank you, Wayne, for taking the time to share with our audience and our community. We do have a lot of businesses that that we work with and that follow us and that watch the lives that we do. And I want to just thank our audience, to everyone that's been watching today and who will watch the replay. Today, I had the honor of talking with Wayne Slavitt, and he is the author of Run It Like You'll Sell It: Adopting the Seller's Mindset to Maximize the Value of Your Business. And in this case, Wayne, you've given some great information. We can't wait to get you on stage again in 2022. And I think, there are a lot of businesses out there that I'm going to be sending this video to, so that they can, just kind of get their gears going to, really start thinking about what are those things that they need to do in preparation. And not only that, they really need to reach out to you. And I think you gave great information today. So thank you for being here. Thank you to our audience for joining us today. And we will see you next time on Luminary Leaders Live. Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you.